Drew. Thanks for being on In the Field with me. We're going to be talking a little bit about gongs and electronics and what you guys have done in your past and how it's all kind of come together to now. So, were gongs always in your life, Karen?
For about 24 years now.
Yeah.
So, I guess that means yes.
Yeah. Because you're only 25 years old.
That's right. Ever since I was born, I had an obsession with metal.
Ah, okay, great.
Since 91, they've been an obsession.
Okay. And how about you? I know you're involved in electronics, but how about instrumentation? Have you worked with instruments and directly and in your experience?
Yeah, I've always cottoned to like sound collage and music concrete more than I want to become, proficient at this. It started when I was little and I got one of those old portable cassette recorders and I would make mixtapes, and then I learned how to cut the tape and make edits, and so I would make these weird tapes of like edited stuff when I was like young, and it became dormant, and I thought it was maybe one of those trails that never gets followed up. But then as I got into being in a band, I was like, okay, eventually I'm gonna kill myself if I remain in the band.
I've seen some videos of him nearly killing himself.
Yeah.
It's good that he changed trajectories.
To something better. So that was like, I'll go behind the desk. And,
right.
Yeah, and this lets me combine both things.
Right. When did you meet Karen?
Here at this school, I was a student, 2002.
Yeah.
Yeah. I recorded one of her. Well, I asked her to record some material, and she was interested in doing sort of her next record, and so those interests dovetailed nicely. And then
It was the follow-up to Metalwork, which was my solo CD, back from 2000. A long time ago. When planes fell from the sky and Y2K.
What was your very first gong?
It was my 30-inch Paiste symphonic gong.
Yeah.
And I got that in February of '92. I was obsessed with gongs in the fall of '91. And ran into him at a Percussive Art Society convention. Big 60-inch Stockhausen gong.
Yeah, that's
changed my life.
It's kind of rare. I mean, you don't hear a lot of people, wax poetically about gongs in general, right? So there was something about the gong in you that really connected you.
There was a resonance. I mean, I heard it from far away, and I just had to go. It's like tarantulas out looking for love on Mount Diablo in August.
Were there any particular artists? Yeah, tarantulas, I like that.
Okay.
Were there any particular artists, or was it just natural phenomenon that brought you to the world of gongs?
It was natural phenomenon that brought me to the world of gongs, and then when I discovered that the one gong that drew me in was the Stockhausen gong, 60-inch microphony gong that he used in Microphony 1 and 2,
Okay.
which I had the vinyl of.
Right.
I'm rather fond of Stockhausen.
Okay.
And so it just rolled from there. I had to get a gong. It wasn't just the musical aspect of it. It was sort of a transformative experience. Vibrationally for me, it just spoke to me. You just gently strike it, and there's a vibrations that happen, and all of the thoughts went out of my brain, and everything relaxed, and all of a sudden everything was okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it went really deep. Besides the creative potential of the harmonics, and I mean, just discovering the gong, and then spending years working on developing techniques, learning from other gongists, and then taking it and just perfecting, pulling specific frequencies out of various gongs.
Well, that makes sense, and it kind of relates to what you were talking about, Drew, with sound collage, because in a way, gongs present a collage of sound as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. They kind of create their own collage depending on like the formation and surface of the gong, and so yeah, those rich opportunities for exploration. And then to touch on what she said about the hearing the gong and then having all of your clutter melt away. That's like, I think what happens in a really good show for us is that sonically it's set up well enough that everyone in the crowd has an experience of being vibrated, and it almost, not to say it doesn't matter what we play, but it's less important than the actual experience of just sitting and vibrating for an hour. You know, it aligns you, and it physiologically creates. So we basically, on a good show, we create our own blissed out audience, which is like awesome. You know, a lot of bands have relied on drugs for that.
Yeah, but
years,
you know,
but we
who
don't
needs
have
drugs
to.
when you got gongs?
You got gongs, yeah. I mean, it's great. You could get everything from super subtle and mellow to completely bombastic and overmodulating and startling, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My favorite moments are when the gong is still like blossoming out, and you have no idea where the top of that is going to be, and your brain and heart get very tense for a moment where you're like, oh my god, how loud is it going to get? And then it finally crests, and you're like, okay.
It's also if you use friction and you get the gong to sing, and then it starts to you get it excited to a point where it starts to change, it starts to morph, and then it pitch shifts on its own. Oh, it's pretty amazing.
So when you're working behind the board and capturing the sounds that Karen is starting to generate, how are you helping to enhance that? Or I'm curious, because I know I've seen you do it once before, but I'm curious to how you're reacting with what Karen's doing and how that.
Well, the first order of business is just to make sure that the gongs, so there's two systems. There's what we call the main PA, which is only the gong sounds, unaffected, amplified but unaffected. And my first order of business is to make sure that's really on par, tight, everything's good. The nature of having a lot of open microphones inches away from a lot of flat metal surfaces means that feedback is a huge problem, and it changes from venue to venue and ceiling to ceiling, and so there's a bit of sort of organization and you know enforcement of rules upon the frequencies, and then once that's taken care of, I can through the aux sends, I can pick whichever gong or combination of gongs I want, and I have two really simple paths. I have one that is the Moog MF104Z analog delay, and then and then a distortion pedal. That's the entirety of the channel, and then the other one is a reverb and a distortion pedal, and the reverb also has a capture and hold, like an infinite capture.
Which is extremely useful.
Yeah, and so with that, so sometimes some of the things Karen does require the gong to be sort of warmed into it. Like when you're bowing a gong, there is always a lag period, and there's never a guarantee that it's going to elicit just the right kind of sound.
It's kind of a mood thing.
Yeah.
It's like playing a big fretless disc.
Yeah.
Right, and so the bow has to be a specific tension, and you have to have a lot of rosin to move the metal. But if you don't intuit what you want properly, like you got to be relaxed. You could just get the gong doing a screechy thing.
Yeah.
So you got to get it oscillating at a lower frequency. So I usually, to get that gong, at least capture, get some of the kind of coarser vibrations happening. I always just kind of give it a little shove with the palm of my hand, and I get it kind of going.
And I'll capture a low frequency as quickly as one develops, and then I can amplify that, and that actually helps the gong to go towards that path.
Yeah.
Like to stray, or to keep from straying towards these, you know, other high unruly frequencies.
By the same token, you know, if there's something high frequency
Right.
that gets excited in the room, then it's almost impossible for me to pull out a low frequency that I want, or for a gong, for instance, to morph and do that pitch shifting thing, because the gongs react to what's happening in the room. They're very sympathetic. So
Oh,
you'll
okay.
get sympathetic vibrations that can create some nodal points from what you're trying to do. So it's always a challenge. I mean, like Drew was saying, every place is different.
So you're listening to kind of a different thing that maybe what's happening without, like, are you listening with headphones as well?
No,
no, you're listening on the stage.
Just
Yeah.
right next to the
Right there,
bass,
right next to
Yeah.
with the subwoofer at his feet.
I see.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I really need to be in physical contact with the vibrations, because the thing about a gong tone or a gong sound and feedback is that there's a period of time where they're indiscernible from each other.
Until
And
it
so,
gets out of control.
yeah, and until it's kind of too late. So, having worked really closely with them, I have like a good feel, but I literally need to be feeling it to be able to tell that, that one's going the wrong way, and then I put the electronic damper on it. Yeah, it's a that part of it is really fun.
There's never a dull moment.
Yeah.
So is it?
It's like hanging 10 on a big wave
Right.
at Mavericks, man, every time.
I'm hearing that the sounds improvisatory as well, like that it's not completely planned, or
Well,
is
it's as planned as we can make it. I mean,
Yeah.
we do play actual compositions. We have scores
Okay.
that we play, and we stick to that.
Yes.
And it's fairly consistent. But like, if a space has a super low ceiling, or it's super resonant, or like when we played that outdoor maker fair.
Don't
like,
recommend
oh my god.
a lot of open mics
Then
and
there's
gongs outside.
then there's some gremlins that come around and sort of mess with you, and then at that point you have to get improvisatory. As you
Yeah.
said.
right?
You really have to improvise. Now, that said, I mean, we do have specific things that we play, but there are points within that. The improvisation is huge. Right? So we do improvise within the scores, and then respond to what we have to respond to keep the piece together.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's all gongs, right? Are you using other percussion?
It's pretty
Elements
much
as well.
all gongs. I'm
Yeah.
using some key chimes.
Yeah.
I used to be a janitor, so
Ah.
they just have a really airy, nice sound. And I use a hammer axe dust bowl because it has a super quick decay. It's a nice dry sound, and it just sort of breaks up the legato a bit.
Right.
But
And-
95%.
And the same for you, Drew, as well. I mean, you have compositions so that you kind of know what pedals you're utilizing at certain moments,
Yes.
or
Yes.
is there some
Yeah.
like kind of random choice involved?
No. That's one of the things I like about having two really simple paths is that I know all of the parameters of each item in the path, and so I don't spend a lot of time foraging for food. I can pretty much go to the garden and pick what I want and dust it off, and it might be a little bit bigger or smaller than the last one, but it's still going to be a carrot.
What it is.
Yeah,
Right.
and so it's definitely was one of our goals as having both worked in improv music for a while, was to just try and limit, well, initially to eliminate, but then reality set in, and to try and limit those periods of where's the next idea going to come from, So we have like a framework, and then there are parts that, and this is really cool, well, we'll take off with that, but we don't have to sort of try out things in front of people, we can do that at
We
home.
did that in the woodshed.
Yeah, exactly.
We spent a lot of time woodshedding.
Yeah, and experimenting with sound.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, lots of endless
Yeah, it was.
improvisations that were actually the improvisation was the birth of the composition.
Right.
Like all the compositions we have are products of hours of improvising together.
Sort of distilled
And then
down into the
nipping
good
and tucking.
bits.
Yeah, you should see our early scores from 2008.
Yeah.
And how are you scoring that?
Well, I used to be super rigid. I came up with my own notation, and then it was color coded. And then I couldn't see Drew, so I got these. I like cars, so I got these old vintage Model T and Model A rear view mirrors, like the smoky old glass. And I'd tape them to the stands because my back is always turned, as you know. You see the back.
Yeah.
There. So I could see Drew. So we could cue each other. We were all caged about it. We had like
Yeah,
stopwatches.
it was really
Right.
like
And it was
rigid.
super rigid. It was super timed. Okay, and we used to have the laptop and we'd play against some backing tracks and
Right.
stuff, so it was very timed.
Mhm.
And that we found. I mean, I slavishly scored all this stuff, and that became. It was just a little stiff because the gongs. Well, they like to breathe,
Right.
right? So
Right.
it's not like a thump or a thump. It's like wah. You know.
Right.
Okay, you can damp it, but they like to breathe.
Yeah.
So it felt a little clunky when it was rigidly scored. So we
Mhm.
have more broad stroke scores, and we play within there. But I have a spreadsheet of, okay, for this tune, these gongs are up. I made it so it's like...
Yeah, that's a new addition. It's
Right.
awesome.
Oh,
Mhm.
it's a
Like-
transition.
It's something I don't have to think about
Making
now.
the
Right.
transitions,
It's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are you, since you mentioned that they're sympathetic, so
Mhm.
when they're close together and you're playing a few of them and then maybe others will vibrate, do you find that there's a consistency that you can create in that area, or is it there's a certain element of chaos that's always there?
Well,
I mean, once you know the room. Right.
there is consistency. There is
Mhm.
always that element of consistency, no matter how unruly the room is. I know very specific things I could get from each gong,
Mhm.
but there is always the element of chaos as well,
Mhm.
ready to blend with the consistent factor,
Right.
change it up a bit.
And you just released a new album I see online.
Yesterday.
We did. We're
Yeah.
so excited.
Yes.
It took a while.
It
Wow.
did take a
Well,
while.
Currently on
yeah.
Bandcamp.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
Yes.
And you tell folks a little bit about what this new album is about.
Well, this new album, we did the first Machine Shop album
Mhm.
was based on improvisations, and then Drew worked his magic, and then
Yeah, that was sort of like played live and then composed in the studio by editing or, relayering and yeah.
Your collage
And then we-
roots.
And then exactly. And then we literally learned those songs.
yeah,
Oh.
That was how.
that was this. I scored the entire
You
album,
reverse engineer
Yes,
your own records
yes,
to do a
I
live.
did,
Exactly.
and then we tried to. I like, let's do it live. He said, "You're nuts."
I
I'm
literally
like, I'm
did.
not.
I was
Look
like,
here, I got the scores.
We
And
can't
so,
do this
so
live.
at that point, we said, okay, well, we'll still play those tunes, but let's see what happens with us as collaborators. And that's what we did. We woodshedded.
Yeah, and we sort of developed like repeatable phenomena through that process because it was like, oh, that was awesome when you did it, but now can you do it every time? Not exactly in this shape and form, but can you do that thing every time so it's the same? And so that was like step one. Yes, that
Yes,
can
we
happen.
can.
And then it was like, okay, well, let's sort of learn how we can interact better, because literally that album wasn't really interacting. It was merely recording, capturing, and then me editing, but in separate chunks. Then it was like, well, what can we do together? And that actually solved part of the rigidness problem, because it was cool. It was like, oh, I'm doing this, and she loves that sound, so
Organic, yeah.
it's inspiring this other thing.
So this album is a lot of that. But then there's, okay, so we're constantly growing, maybe slow steps now and again, but we have a new angle that we're really excited.
Huh.
After this album, Drew did some interesting composition and adding his own synthesized type music to it,
Ah.
right? So
Yeah.
now he's going to be more of a, as opposed to just processing what I'm doing, actually contributing.
Yeah, I'll be playing in
musically,
the future.
Through programming or
I
a
think
synthesizer?
I would like it to be the iPad, actually. I would
Okay.
like it to be
Something
both
small.
a sample-based and a synthesizer type thing. There's a real... So what I learned in creating this album, there's really two tracks on the new album. Number 1, Orson and D. Boone, and number 4, Super Collider. And those really... What I did was I took a piece that Karen had played and that we were really familiar with and had played live, and I just kind of took the lid off and was like, okay, well,
Here we go.
is there a compositional structure in that existing thing? And so I mapped out the notes, and then I sort of saw, all right, well, traditionally this would go with that, and of course I reject most of the traditional ideas right off the bat. But eventually there were enough cues, note-wise in what she played that I could create a viable composition that was completely sympathetic, but it turned out to be really important, at least to my ear, and that was the one that mattered, that the synthesized sounds had a very similar structure to a gong sound. Like the actual physical shape and decay and all of that, the more closely it resembled a gong in character, it just felt like that kind of fit, you know, where it was just, oh yes, it was yeah. So, but that's for the next
Right.
That's
phase.
the next phase.
So your performance at Summit would be similar to your new album.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
very
Yes.
much so. And then
Yeah.
we're going to take this new blossom, this little bloom, this little seed sprout, and we're
Right.
going to go with that and see where that leads us.
Yeah.
And that's, I have to say, just about my journey with the gongs is it's never been static.
Right. Sounds like there's always something new to turn to.
24 years later, there's always still something new to discover.
How many gongs do you have now?
I have 3 dozen.
36.
36
So you got it from 1 to 36.
Yeah.
Do you play them all in your performance?
Well,
Do you have them all available?
I have them all available, and we have set them all up in the studio before. It's quite a feat.
I bet.
So we're gonna play probably a baker's dozen at Outsound.
Okay.
A baker's dozen. Oh, and then the other instrument I play is a rotosound, which is just a sound disc, and you bow it.
But it's still a
spins, and
disc,
it's
so.
stalling.
Yeah, it's a metal object that
It's all metal,
reverberates.
yeah.
Yes.
Oh, though, yeah, it spins, right?
Yeah.
That's when
Spinny,
you-
yeah, the rotosound by Bison.
Oh, great. Wow. That's wonderful.
But yeah, we're pretty specific. Like you're gonna get metal reverberating.
Yeah. And in
That's-
different methods and modes.
Yep,
Yeah.
and notes and
That's right.
Yeah.
shapes and melodies ish.
Yeah.
I'm super excited for that entire night because
Yes.
Carol's
Yeah.
stuff is amazing too, and I
Right.
just think what a perfect.
I think that it works out really well.
Yeah.
Just the two sets, and she's going to do the extreme weather pieces with some film, and then
Nice.
you guys will be up
Great.
after
We'll get
that.
subterranean,
Yeah.
Very much so.
and then
Right, and then into outer
Cosmic.
space.
we'll do micro, macro,
Yeah.
right, and then the pressure changes in between is like the heavy weather.
Yeah, one of her pieces is actually about usually it's in the winter it's a frozen lake, and you can't get to it, but now you can in the winter, but the lake itself is still frozen, but it was in the daytime it would start to thaw, and she was saying how the whole lake would boom
Yeah.
as it was starting to thaw and reverberate through the valley. So it just reminded me of when you were talking about what the gongs do with the shape and the
Yeah.
reverberation and the sympathetic elements. It's kind of, there's a relationship there. I
It
don't know.
always, I mean, life and the world and everything else, we're like
Yeah.
a giant amoeba.
Right, exactly. Great. Well, I look forward to hearing you both at the Outside Music Summit on the opening night on July 29th. So,
Yeah.
We really appreciate it. Thanks very
Yeah,
much.
thank you.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, great.